Oh, they brought back one of my favorite pulse rifles. But this one's pretty popular too, and look at that multi-kill clip. I wonder which one's better. Darkest Before was brought back in Season of the Lost along with many favorite Trials of the Nine weapons. You can get this arc-flavored 540 RPM pulse rifle from the boss encounter of the Prophecy dungeon, and if you really want a good roll, you can actually repeatedly farm this boss over and over again for extra chances at a drop. The Gridskipper, on the other hand, is a fairly new pulse rifle introduced in Season 14, which quickly became a favorite among pulse rifle fans. The easiest way to get this one is just to focus Umbral engrams at the helm. Just like Darkest Before, it's also a 540 RPM pulse rifle, but it has the Void flavor and a slightly different perk pool. Unfortunately for me, it's not all that easy to determine which one's actually better. Both of them have their advantages and disadvantages, and it's really hard to come up with a definitive answer. I do have a recommendation for you though, and it's going to come down to basically just one aspect. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves though. The first thing we need to think about is the role that you want to have occupied with a rapid fire pulse rifle. In my opinion, you shouldn't play too passively with these, since the longer range options like the high impact and aggressive pulses will kill significantly faster in a laning duel. The fastest kill you can hope to achieve on a 540 without a damage buff is a 0.8 second time to kill. Even though something like the Messenger can 2-burst you a bit faster, 0.8 seconds is competitive with most mainstream weapons for the medium range duels. The high rate of fire with these pulses makes them very forgiving too. Missing a few shots is really just not a big deal since you're pumping out bullets so quickly compared to weapons that fire a bit slower. Unfortunately, the low damage per shot archetype makes the 540 pulses not too well suited for a peak shotting duel. You can do it, but it's just easier done with a slower firing pulse or weapons like hand cannons that dish out a huge chunk of damage in a very short window of time. These rapid fire pulses play almost more like an auto rifle than most of the other pulse archetypes thanks to the high rate of fire. In my opinion, you should aim for an aggressive run and gun playstyle with any 540 pulse. With these weapons, your place is on the front lines, getting as many kills as possible and using your strafing ability to deal a lot of damage while being really hard to hit. Both the Gridskipper and the Darkest Before can get many perks which will help to extend your kill streak. Let's take a brief look at the perks and stats of each weapon and see which one may have the edge. Perk-wise, we have many interesting choices. If you're looking for extra damage, the Gridskipper has multi-kill clip, whereas the Darkest Before has Rampage. Neither of these perks will let you 2-burst an opponent after a single kill. Yeah, 2 stacks of multi-kill clip will allow you to 2-burst a lower resilience Guardian, but realistically, this opportunity is just not going to come up that often in real games. High Impact Reserves is a perk unique to the Gridskipper. It can be paired with Slideways to keep your magazine low and reap the benefits of the extra damage. Again, this extra damage really just provides a slightly more lenient headshot requirement to land the kill. It's no kill clip replacement. In terms of consistency perks, both pulses have some really interesting choices. For the Gridskipper, Moving Target, Slideways, and Snapshot are all great perks that can help your pulse up front. Firmly Planted is also available and especially useful for my Spectral Blade hunters out there who want to get their wall hacks from a crouch kill. But honestly, I'm finding it a bit hard to recommend on this particular pulse because you really want to be moving around quite a bit with these rapid fire frames. The Darkest Before also brings some really interesting consistency perks to the party. There's Quick Draw, Surplus, Elemental Capacitor, and most importantly, Slide Shot. You might not have noticed, but there's actually a key difference between Slideways and Slide Shot, and it can be really important for you to take into consideration. Both perks reload a tiny bit of your magazine, but there's actually something far more important. As far as I can tell, Slide Shot is active for the duration of your slide, and in addition to that, for the first shot fired within about 1.5 seconds after the slide. You'll be experiencing plus 20 range and plus 50 stability under the effects of Slide Shot. If you take into consideration the stability penalty during the slide, Slide Shot will actually eclipse the minus 20 penalty and give you a plus 30 stability boost. Slideways, on the other hand, works a little bit differently. Whenever you slide, you'll get Slideways active for about 4 seconds. During this time, your weapon is granted about 20 bonus stability and about 25 bonus handling. The minus 20 stability from the slide nerf will cancel out the plus 20 from Slideways, which will bring you back to basically just the default performance of the weapon. In total, I think this makes Slide Shot's boost a bit more impactful since it also grants the bonus range, but Slideways is active for longer and it does boost your handling. Personally, I think Slide Shot takes the win here. Okay, enough slide talk for now. I also wanted to mention that Elemental Capacitor can be a really effective option depending on the subclass you choose and your input method of choice. The controller players can really benefit from the extra stability on a Void class, while mouse and keyboard players may prefer Arc for the faster handling, especially for switching back and forth with a shotgun in close quarters play. In terms of kill dependent perks, Gridskipper gets Killing Wind, Heating Up, and Tunnel Vision to help secure a follow-up kill, while the Darkest Before only gets Tunnel Vision. Personally, I'm not entirely sold by these perks on either gun, especially with the synergies presented. Sure, the benefits you gain here are nice, but other consistency perks on the table are permanently active. My top pick in this situation would probably be Killing Wind on the Gridskipper, since it grants a decent chunk of extra range, which really helps these 540 pulses, which tend to struggle a little bit in the range department. I know my friend Cool Guy is a heating up fanatic, but I guess I haven't really found that much value from it so far. Maybe I need to spend some more time testing it. Let me know in the comments if you really like this perk. Besides damage perks and consistency perks, Darkest Before also gets Overflow and Wellspring as unique options. I think that going for Wellspring on the Darkest Before can make a lot of sense depending on your build, because remember, damage perks don't really change the kill time on these pulses all that much. A boost to your ability cooldown is always appreciated, especially in a game like Destiny that can be kind of an ability spam simulator sometimes. Overflow is also really cool, especially for 6v6 play. If you collect any type of ammo, you can buff up your magazine size by double and get an auto reload, which means you're going to be shooting for quite a while before you run out of bullets. Overall, it's hard to say which of these pulses has the better perk set. Darkest Before gets the superior slide shot, but Gridskipper gets the slightly more useful multi-kill clip, and it has the potential to 2-burst in the right situation. I don't think the perks on these two pulses are really all that different to make a final judgment. I believe that both pulses can offer you a lot of playmaking potential if you use the perks on whatever role you end up with to their strengths. The Darkest Before can get slightly more boosted stats from the perks, and the Gridskipper can get slightly more range and damage after a kill. If you're curious, my personal god roll for the Gridskipper would probably be Moving Target or Killing Wind, Multi-Kill Clip, Ricochet Rounds, and any range or stability barrel with a range or stability masterwork. Range is especially helpful on these 540 pulses because it makes them significantly more effective at the longer distances, but stability is also great because it keeps the burst as tight as possible in addition to making them easier to use and keeping the aim assist cone tighter for a longer period of time. On the Darkest Before, I really like either Slide Shot or Surplus with Rampage, Wellspring, or even something like Elemental Capacitor depending on which subclass you plan to use. Again, I'd set out this pulse to have a good mix of range and stability. Something like a Stability Masterwork, Hammerforge, and Ricochet Rounds gets you to 71 stability, which is maxed out at a full 100 by Slide Shot even with the effects of the slide nerf. So with these perks figured out, the next thing to take a look at is the stats for each pulse. Of course, to make this video even more difficult to come to a conclusion, both pulses have virtually the same stats for range, stability, handling, and reload speed. This might be good for balance, but it's very annoying for me trying to rate these pulses since, after all, on paper, they're basically tied in every single way. They're the same archetype, same slot, very similar perks, same stats. Am I doomed to leave you with an inconclusive video? Well, maybe not. There is one very important difference between these two pulses, the optics. The Gridskipper has a zoom stat of 18, while the Darkest Before only has a zoom stat of 17, but it also highlights your enemies, and this is a really big deal. The 18 zoom of the Gridskipper is the same as the base zoom of the high impact pulse rifles. We know that the zoom level of a weapon directly influences how strongly the range stat contributes to the effective range of the weapon. Unfortunately, due to the low base range stat of the Gridskipper, this doesn't really come into effect all that much. According to D2 Gunsmith, a max range Gridskipper can only begin scratching the 37 meter mark. Even with the lower zoom stat, a max range Darkest Before comes in just a little bit shorter, around 35 meters. Range is huge in Destiny, but realistically, a 2 meter difference probably won't be felt all that much in the game, so it's not something worth losing sleep over. After all, both of these pulses are brutally outranged by options like the Messenger, the Sacred Providence, and the Legal Action, all of which have more than 37 meters of range at base, not even accounting for perks. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't really see the 540 pulses as being effective laning options. They're really more meant for a running gun skirmishing playstyle. For me, I think the 2 meter range advantage of the Gridskipper just isn't quite as valuable as the wider FOV in close quarters and the highlighted targets of the Darkest Before. I also consider the Darkest Before to have the overall cleaner looking sight aesthetic, but that one really comes down to personal preference. The way the Gridskipper sight moves around when strafing has always kind of bothered me. If you combine the nicer looking sight on the Darkest Before with Slide Shot, Surplus, or Elemental Capacitor, you're going to have a very smooth shooting experience, which I think the Gridskipper can't quite match. It's much easier to acquire a highlighted target and track them perfectly through visual effects and on-screen clutter and still get your optimal time to kill. The higher FOV will help you be more aware of your surroundings and take in more of the battlefield at any time. Also, it'll make your pulse more versatile for those closer range duels. For me, this is the main reason why the Darkest Before takes the pancake as the very slightly better pulse rifle. Don't let me discourage you from using the Gridskipper though, it certainly does have some advantages. Maybe you want to squeeze out every little bit of extra range possible and the larger zoom modifier is really valuable for you. Or maybe you really prefer multi-kill clip. The beauty of this game is that the choice is ultimately yours. But if you want to know which one you should grind for, I would definitely suggest starting off with the Darkest Before. You can just farm the boss encounter over and over again to get a great chance at this weapon. And while you're at it, you might also get a god roll of the Trials of the 9 shotgun, the Sudden Death, which is arguably one of the best shotguns in the game right now. Before we wrap this up, I want to quickly give a shout out to my favorite 540 RPM pulse rifle of all time, which is the Claws of the Wolf from Iron Banner. Unfortunately, you can't acquire this insane pulse rifle anymore, but if you've been playing for a while, check your vault to see if you happen to have one with kill clip. My god, after using both the Darkest Before and the Gridskipper for this video, I broke out my best roll on the Claws and wow, it was just a night and day difference. The thing about kill clip is that you can 2 burst with a 540 RPM pulse. This means that you're challenging the kill time of a Desperado Messenger even without needing to land a headshot kill. Just watch these clips of the Claws absolutely annihilating these lobbies. It's a gun that I really hope makes a comeback in a future Iron Banner. In non-light enabled PvP modes, I'd take the Claws over either of these pulses any day, but if you're looking to play Trials or Iron Banner, it's off the table since it can't be infused up to the current maximum power level. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. I'm planning to make a lot of these types of head-to-head comparison videos in the future. Also, let me know in the comments which one you'd like to see me make next. After you choose which of these pulses make the most sense for you, you're going to want to pair them with a good shotgun, so be sure to check out my recent video on the Riiswalker versus the Fractethyst. It's the video on the top of your screen and also linked in the description.